G'day humans, welcome to the safe space for dangerous ideas, and it's one thing to dabble in dangerous ideas. When you're a podcaster whose métier is having uncomfortable conversations with provocative people, but when you're a public figure who wins awards and makes big movies and sells out arenas and stadiums and has to please a lot of fans, the threat of public shaming for expressing a provocative point of view is all the more intense. Tim Minchin has straddled this for decades now. He's one of the most successful creatives in Australia. I make no secret about the fact that I think he's an absolute genius, and I love his work, I love his music, and I love his comedy. You probably know him best as the writer of the lyrics and the music to Matilda the Musical, which has been running on the West End for 13 years. It won more Olivier Awards, which is Britain's Tony Awards, than any other show in history at the time that it won them. It was on Broadway. It was nominated for a bunch of Tonys. It was in the year that Kinky Boots was on, and so Kinky Boots won, unfortunately. Nonetheless, it's been wildly successful. It was turned into a 2022 movie, which my kids love. There's a book of its main song, When I Grow Up, and this is just one feather in the cap of the many that Tim Minchin has to his name. He went on to also do another musical of Groundhog Day, which won Best New Musical at the Oliviers, was nominated for, I think, 7 Tony Awards as well. And he's done a lot of television. He co-wrote and starred in an Australian TV show called Upright. But really, he's best known in Australia as a thinker, cultural commentator, sort of whimsical, almost national jester who will call us out on our inconsistencies and provoke us and make us think. His shows, as I said, can sell out stadiums and arenas, just him and a piano, or him with a big band at the Opera House, as the case may be, and he usually does music and comedy or musical comedy. He's about to hit the United States for his first tour in the US in a little while, so if you're listening to this in the US, make sure that you catch him if you can. And, you know, what's delightful about Tim is that he is so unique. He's so unashamedly Tim Minchin. He doesn't pull any punches, and he's always been an outspoken rationalist and atheist and skeptic and really sort of Enlightenment Renaissance man. One thing that we talk about in this interview is we refer to a conversation that I had with Osher Günsberg, probably Australia's most successful television host, who hosts The Bachelor and Australian Idol and a bunch of other shows. And Osher was on the show recently because he wanted to kind of wrestle openly with the impact that the conversation around male violence is having on young men and what the most constructive way for us to have that conversation is. And Tim refers to my conversation with Osher in a way that, in hindsight, he was worried might make it seem like he was being critical of the way that Osher was articulating himself. So he wants to make it clear, and I want to make it clear, that the way that Osher did, that there's an enormous amount of empathy and sympathy and kind of common ground that we're feeling with Osher's predicament, because it's a predicament of people being in the public eye, trying to talk about and wrestle with really, really complicated things. So if you haven't heard that, it's worth going back and listening to my conversation with Osher Günsberg. If you have heard that, or if your name is Osher Günsberg and you're listening to this, understand that what Tim says here is coming from a place of love and not from a place of criticism. There's another thing you should probably be aware of, because we allude to it here. I don't want to make a big deal out of it, but it made the press in Australia, which is that after October 7th in November, there was an incident at the Sydney Theatre Company where, at the opening night of a new Chekhov play, well, it wasn't a new Chekhov play, Chekhov can't write anymore, sadly, but it was a new production of The Seagull. I was there in the audience. Tim was apparently there in the audience, so we didn't know each other were there. And a few of the cast members at the curtain call wore Palestinian scarves in solidarity with the Palestinian people. And this was mere weeks after the slaughter of over 1,000 Jews. And it was regarded as being insensitive. It created a big ballyhoo. And at a Tim Minchin event shortly thereafter, and just a night or two after his mother had died, he reportedly asked the audience not to film and not to record and just to have a moment with each other, and reportedly said something along the lines of, let's not judge people who make mistakes in this environment, but let's also understand the hardship that our Jewish friends are going through at the moment, and it can be difficult for us to relate. Something along those lines was reported. Of course, someone leaked that to the press. It was written up in huge splashy ways by disingenuous journalists. Tim was put through the public ringer. I've spoken about this on the show before. Looking at his Twitter mentions was just a lesson in human savagery and hyperbole and viciousness in terms of talking about him being a baby killer and having genocide on his hands and so on, and he contemplated how to respond to that public shaming. We refer to that, but I don't want to dig into it. I don't want to make another hash of it. I'm not going to put it up on social media or anything. I just want you to have the background so that you, if you didn't see that, you know what we're talking about when we start talking about that, because it's a crucial piece of the jigsaw of his experience with public shaming and really his broader critique of the way that we're having conversations and the way that artists in particular can get caught inside worthy echo chambers. I think that's all that needs to be said. He has a new book. It's called You Don't Have to Have a Dream. Before I go to this interview, I want to give you a taste of what Tim sounds like. When I was hosting my radio show on the public broadcaster, every year, in fact, before I had the show, I would almost always be on the air on Christmas Day because the main big, there's usually a national show, in other words, and none of the full-on A-listers want to work on Christmas Day. So they go to the B cast, and they usually picked me to host a national Christmas show, I think every year for the past 6 years. And every Christmas Day, I would play this live recording of Tim Minchin doing his song White Wine in the Sun, which captures, as well as pretty much any work of art, I think, the weird conundrum of being an Australian, in particular the weird conundrum of being an Australian who lives overseas on the other side of the world, as so many Australian expats do. And it always brings a tear to my eye. It always captures something unique about our conflicted relationship to religiosity, to Christmas, to the holidays, to the strange state that Australia finds itself in, being in the Southern Hemisphere while the rest of the world is festively enjoying winter delicacies. So have a listen to this. Enjoy White Wine in the Sun.
The old combination of socks, jocks and chocolates is just fine by me, 'cause I'll be seeing my dad, my brother and sisters, my gran and my mum. They'll be drinking white wine in the sun.
There you have it. That's White Wine in the Sun. If you're able to get through that without choking up a little bit, then you're either stronger than me or less Australian than I am. Without further ado, enjoy this conversation with the one, the only, Tim Minchin.
I like that one of us is thinking of the other. I got you sushi and you got
And I didn't get you
coffee.
anything. I got me coffee. But yeah. I got me coffee before I knew that you were not here. Because I thought you might have arrived before me.
No, that's true.
But I'm sorry. Now I feel terrible.
Landed right at 4 o'clock.
And you've made me feel terrible as well.
Well,
because I did a terrible
thing.
thing.
You feel terrible.
I did a terrible thing.
I pointed out how terrible you are, and you felt terrible. It's within your control.
We're in control of our feelings. Thank you.
You're the one who doesn't think words are that important.
You're
you
a
should
sage.
be in control of your feelings.
Do you want a coffee? I could send someone out for a coffee.
No, I don't want a coffee. I've had too much coffee today. I'm actually very happy.
Good. But that's not really related to your caffeine intake.
No, I'm satiated.
Satiated caffeine-wise?
Yeah.
What the listener doesn't know or the viewer doesn't know is that you were kind enough to go out and get food for us.
Yeah, you
I'm
were low on
impressed.
calories.
Yeah, but you were... Yeah, I mean, not...
I was hungry.
You were hungry.
But you don't identify as someone who is particularly thrown by hunger, whereas I'm out. I'm just done.
I was so impressed when you were like, no, I'm going to walk 2 blocks to a supermarket.
Get fresh salmon.
And get some sushi.
Ethically fished salmon.
And so... that is something you have to manage your energy levels consciously with food and.
Well, this is my 3rd podcast of the day. Sorry, and they've been like 40-minute chats, and I've done a 2-hour photo shoot and a 2-hour signing session, and I'm hungry and I didn't sleep enough last night. So it's just like, how can I fix myself here?
Yeah.
So caffeine's one, but once you've had a certain amount, it just makes you feel like shit.
Yeah.
And making sure I'm not hungry.
My solution to being tired, irritable, hungry, and worn down is just
masturbation.
Is furious masturbation.
Furious
preferably
at
in
oneself.
public.
Yes,
No, is just to grit my teeth and go and push. But
yeah.
I'm interested in how people who perform, especially in the evenings when you're doing a tour, when you're doing a show, how you manage your energy levels.
I've got to get it right. I've got to get, just the right amount of food, the right amount of tequila, which is not much of either, but I definitely need to not have no energy on board. You really notice it if you're a runner, if you run for many years, like I have, getting a meal in at the right time. Not that I run competitively, but I really notice if I'm don't have enough calories.
Yeah, but is the physiological is feeding physiology different from psychology? Because it's quite a delicate thing. Like what we're doing now, or what you're doing in a show is quite. There's a razor thin line between being at peak performance and being very, very bad.
Yeah. I mean, for most people.
You can phone it in. And still be brilliant.
I think, we burn more calories when we're thinking harder. I mean, I know it's not many, but you I don't know. I get grumpy and sort of a bit hypoglycemic, I think.
That joke that you just made is an interesting one, where you say for most people there's a razor thin line between brilliance and doing a terrible performance, but for you it could be different. Is there a kernel of truth in that? In that, I often wonder of someone as prolific as you and as creative as you, how much is, and I'm not talking about your career. I know you work bloody hard on your career, but when you're sitting down to write a song, how much is will and work, and how much is a gift?
Well, I don't know, and I think my prolificness and my quality are overstated in your premise. But and I'm not being falsely modest. I've been doing it for a while, and I've put out some stuff. But
done so much.
So will and work are two different things, and then maybe craft is something separate. So craft is something you accumulate over time. Work is your ability or your capacity for just doing the hours you need to do. Will is, I guess you could define will as the sort of switch that you switch to start. But I think about intent, and I think there's one thing I know, and I think I can say this without sounding too hubristic, is many people have worked a lot harder than me to be good at what I do and are not as good. I mean, and when I say not as good, not as successful. So I just happen to have a brain that does these things, and that happened to intercept with an audience at a time and a place in the world where my sort of brain and my sort of aesthetic or my sort of, view on the world found an audience, and it's all luck, right? Which I know I bang on about a lot, but the fact is, my brain, the sort of whatever I have, the slightly sciencey, nerdy side combined with a sort of arty, creative side, is slightly unusual, and it's just allowed me to do this unusual stuff. But there's no doubt that I play piano better, just simply play piano with more alacrity or speed or whatever than many people who have worked much harder. It's just it just is something I can do. Like some people can play basketball.
So I mean,
some people can have amazing haircuts.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that compliment, and I'm going to take it as such. Although your hair's not bad either.
Well, I've had professionals working on this.
Yeah, I don't have
you
professionals.
Clearly have not.
No, my children do it. But there are two things that you could be saying in there which are both interesting. One is that your particular outlook and your particular form of creativity and your combination of sort of being a science nerd and also your style, your aesthetic.
Yeah.
Resonated for some reason, and it may not have if you'd been born in 17th century Korea.
Hadn't sort of written the right song at the right time.
Yeah, and then the other is your ability to play the piano and that sort of gift. When compose, I mean, composing catchy songs seems to come to you quite easily. Like I was just Googling around. I mean, I don't need to do a lot of Google research to know about you. But in 2010, on New Year's Day, there was this British panel quiz show, and they get celebrities to make a suggestion, and then they have to guess what it is, right? The celebrity says, gives a description in one line, and then they're like, oh, I think they're talking about such and such. You went off and wrote an entire song which was about Google Maps. See, do you even remember this?
Oh, yeah, but there's a bit of magic in that. I wrote that the day before.
Yeah.
I didn't write it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
I thought you were saying I wrote it on the spot. I mean,
No, but yeah. I mean, like,
yes,
you can
I can churn out a funny song.
Yeah, you can come up with a song that's actually catchy and clever and that will stay with people.
Yeah.
In a day.
Yeah.
And then reap the rewards for the rest of your life. In the case of Matilda,
lots of people can do that, but not everyone.
No,
and it's something
not very many.
And the reason it's not, I feel very, very lucky that it's something that I could do a bit and I love doing, so I did it a lot. And on all those tough years when no one took any notice of me and I was struggling, I was like taking $500 to write an entire song about a CEO of a little company. I was doing these corporate gigs for like literally $300-$500 with some like musical theatre improv people, and I'd write a song about the CEO and I'd take a day to do it, and some of them still stick in my head, and so I did the graft and I got my craft up, and it's not for everyone, but it's I like where I've ended up with it. I think it's good. But I was going to say about will is I think sometimes when I reflect on why I can do the particular thing I can do, which I don't do too much, but I feel like sometimes when I watch other creatives, I feel like I have a focus, not as in I'm focusing on work, but like an intentional focus where I feel like my brain is good at going, there it is. That's what I want to get to. It's not just thinking of, I don't really know what I'm saying. I feel like if I think I want to do something and it's within my capacity, I can see the path glowing in front of me.
Right.
Maybe.
Meaning, I
haven't said this before. I'm just like, I feel like
I can tell.
I can get there.
Meaning that you can see the professional career steps.
No.
Meaning that
just
from
like,
a creative perspective, you can feel the.
You know what you have, the gift you have, which is rare.
Please tell me.
Which is that you have an idea, and in a way, even though you don't know where the end of your sentence is, you have this real clear path to get there. You don't pause, you don't and ah, you just structure. And I'm quite good at that too, by the way, but I'm not as good as you. And I feel like I have that a bit with just a piece of work. I just go, I'm going to write a song about what it feels like to try not to have sex with someone you really want to have sex with. And I can sort of feel how that's going to go, I have self-belief.
And is it like I don't know. Now I get it. Now I get it. Is it like you're glimpsing a muse?
Well, I certainly, as you can imagine, don't believe that. I think it's just.
I don't mean a literal. I don't mean a muse who has a mind. I mean, is it?
I don't feel like it's. And maybe I'm just skirting around the idea of inspiration because it makes me uncomfortable.
I mean, the reason I'm asking this, even though it's a really cliched question and I don't normally ask it, like, where do you get your ideas from? And so on, is because I was on Mark Bourris's podcast and he was asking me how much of my success do I attribute to being articulate and to having a command of words, which is what you just mentioned. And I said, like, it doesn't hurt, right? Like a lot. And I can't take credit for it. Actually,
no, absolutely not.
As you say, I start a sentence, I know where I have to end up, and 9 times out of 10, something in my brain allows me to like meander my way there.
It's craft.
Yeah, and so is writing so obviously writing a song is the same way for you.
I wasn't very good young though. I mean, one thing about my career is that it all happened late. And no one at high school went, you've got talent. Really? No, never. No.
You weren't performing in front of year 3?
I was class? Okay. I played the magical cat in a sort of animalish Cinderella in year 5. I was a boy chorister. I was an okay boy chorister. I got little roles in the school plays. I was in the school choir but got kicked out, and I played piano but quit in year 9.
Really?
And no one said, oh, that Minchin boy's got something, ever. Not through, then I went and studied music for 2 years, trying to learn to read music and stuff because it never took and it remained untaken. But
you know who everyone was saying had the piano thing that would make them successful? Me.
Yeah, right.
When I was like in year
you would have
5 or 6,
a capacity.
I was playing the piano backwards and like doing all kinds of Minchin-esque trills and then gave it up, and you were the reverse.
So even at uni, no one, maybe a few people like, oh, he has a way with words. And my songs, I've actually just gone to studio over the last couple of months. I've been in and out of the studio recording. I've got this idea, whether or not I do it, of putting out an album. I thought it would be called Songs from the Attic or something, which basically everything I didn't record in studio, some of which are songs people know. I've recorded a really good studio version of Rock and Roll Nerd because there's only ever live versions, and they're all. So I sort of wanted to lock one in, make it sound really good, but also songs that I played in the Unfunny show that people are like, has that been recorded? And I'm like, no, could you record it? I'm like, okay. But also songs people have never heard. And songs from an album I made in 2001 in my lounge room of my share house in Perth. So I've been recording these things, and there's really a moment when I can think about the songs somewhere in about 1998 when I was 23, I wrote a good song. And somewhere around that 3 or 4 years.
Do you remember what it was?
Well, there's lots. There was a song called At Least I Tried that was earlier that I wrote with my brother. And then the oldest song I recorded for this project is maybe the Song of the Masochist, which is a swing tune. And yeah, I don't know, but somewhere in there I figured something out. And then all along I was sort of writing music for theatre, and actually in hindsight it was obvious that was what suited my style the best. So long before Matilda I was writing songs for youth theatre and stuff in Perth and not really thinking anything would come of that. But I was always okay at that, the storytelling side of songwriting, not the stuff that gets on the radio.
And the being funny bit.
And the being funny bit. And sort of cleverness in the words and the way they related.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Do you think you're underrated as a musician and overrated as a lyricist and comic?
I don't know how I'm rated, really. There are people in the world who think I'm, Tim Minchin's the most underrated songwriter, comedian in the world. Why doesn't everyone know him? And it's like
you can't know whether to be flattered or insulted.
Other people are like, this guy's funny as cancer. I'm not. Whether people find my comedy funny comedy is just so absurdly specific to an audience's cultural inputs. Of course, people find me unfunny, and some people find me hilarious.
So that
I tickle their particular bone.
That reminds me of the first component of the binary that I said 7 years ago, which is the first part is like the cultural contingency of your success, in the sense that you happen to have a particular outlook and a particular attitude and a particular aesthetic that resonated, and the second bit was the work or the will or whatever. So just focusing on that first bit. How did you ever know? I mean, one of the things that creative people find hard is finding their voice, right? Like whatever that means. Like when you're young, like who am I?
That was hard for me. Yeah.
How much of me should be this part of me that is bursting to come out, and how much of me should be a bit more like what the market probably wants?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I didn't think I was going to be a musician. I thought it's a thing I was compelled to do, but I didn't see me reflected in the market. Maybe I did. Certainly not when I was young. I didn't think, my friends went off to drama school, and I thought, well, of course they went to drama school. They're special, I didn't really. It took me a long time to feel like it was okay. And actually, when success came, it was because of me reflecting on Rock and Roll Nerd is a song about a guy who has no struggles to write about. He's like, he wants to be a rock star, but he hasn't suffered, and he's like, doesn't live in the hood. Or like remember we were brought up in the 90s, it was all on one side, the really early hip hop and stuff, and on the other side, grunge. Yeah. It's like you had to be suicidal or poor and black, and I was famously neither. And so actually self-irony, mocking myself was my key, and then mocking others. And then eventually it took years before it took Matilda for me to go, actually, maybe maybe I don't have to only, maybe I'm a good enough muso to just write some songs. And
Right.
so, it took me till I was 45, whenever Apart Together came out, to put out my first studio album.
But
having written songs since I was 12.
Pre-Matilda, you were already selling into a market that didn't necessarily have it. An atheistic, like rationalist, scientific, like white nerdy, kind of cross-dressy, like makeup-wearing, strange persona. Like you weren't turning the volume down on the Minchin-ness.
No. The night before Matilda opened in Stratford-upon-Avon, I opened my arena show with a 55-piece orchestra in Birmingham Arena the night before to the most, bonkers now, to the most Muslim populated city in Europe outside of some, and I sent a runner to the shop to buy 2 copies of the Quran and a copy of Harry Potter.
So you could burn them on stage.
Well, so I could do a bit about burning them on stage.
Really?
Which involved putting the cover of 2 copies of Harry Potter and a copy of the Quran.
Right.
And I took the Quran out of its cover. Shouldn't say that out loud.
Well, weren't you doing it in front of tens of thousands of people?
No, I did. I prepped it.
Okay.
And I put the cover of that around the Harry Potter. I had Harry Potter and the Quran. I was talking about why is this sacred. I was talking about on stage in front of 9,000 something Brums, like talking about sacredness and how we impose agency on things and stuff. And like, if I burnt this, everyone would be like, whatever. But if I burnt this is before J.K. Rowling was her own, where burning J.K.'s books was a thing. And then I revealed it to be both Harry Potter and like, now you feel differently, right? And it wasn't the best bit ever, but it was a pretty good bit and it was pretty ballsy. I was like, at that stage, I'm 35 and I look back then and think, jeepers, I was just eyes on the prize. I was just like, I've been given an opportunity, musicals opening down the road, I've got an arena and a symphony orchestra and I am going all in on this, And maybe that's that intent. It's like, I don't care what other people have done in arenas. I don't care what other people have done with musical comedy. I don't care what other people have done with musical theatre. I can see how I want to make people feel. I believe I have the tools, and if I'm failing on my own terms, and I'm just going to make this the best arena comedy show ever. I'm going to blow people's brains, and I'm going to make this musical make people laugh and cry. And I'm too old. I was already sort of too old to give a shit what other people thought I should be doing.
And do you give less of a shit now than you did then 15 years ago?
I think I've got more to lose now, but I guess I have to. I don't really worry about legacy, but I guess it's hard not to go, look, I've got, not everyone likes me obviously, but I'm respected and I've worked really hard and I've put beautiful things in the world. I've contributed to beautiful things that other people have made, and I've got my comedy and I've got my book now, and let's not throw it all out because I feel desperate to say something agitatey about this.
Right.
Whereas 15 years ago I'd have been like, agitate, see what happens.
Yes, I see.
Well, that's my job.
Right.
But I don't see that as my job anymore, and we can talk about that, but it's appropriate that that's not my job anymore.
Right.
I'm not like a little enfant terrible, like, I'm going to agitate the big guy. I'm 48 and I'm the big guy, so I can hopefully put good ideas into the world through different means, and I think I'm doing
right, but isn't part of putting good ideas into the world also having that no fucks to give swagger to some extent? In the sense,
I think so, but I think no fucks to give swagger reads differently on someone who's very high status.
I see what you mean. Yes, when you're an upstart, it's kind of cheeky.
It's cheeky, and
no, but I guess I don't mean
society relies on those.
I don't mean that you would go out of your way to provoke or offend.
No,
but that you would freely call bullshit when you see it without thinking, oh my goodness, people might take it out of context or people might get angry on social media about it.
Your question is pointed because you know me and I worry about that. And you were talking to Osher about it the other day, and I was thinking, Osher doesn't have quite the language to explain why he's so scared. I love that. Sorry for people who didn't hear that episode of Josh's
Well, they
podcast.
can go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
We were talking about male violence against
and
women,
Osher was
and he
just-
was worried about the stereotyping of all men.
Yeah,
and
the throat
young
clearing
boys.
was insane. He just kept saying, and I do it all the time too. And so Osher was trying to say, Josh, thank you for the things you said about men's violence, because I, as a male who was bullied and felt a lot of fear, blah, blah. And I think maybe the way we're talking to men is not the most helpful way to go about it. But in order to say that, he had to say, obviously I know that women suffer, obviously, over and over and over again, which we all do now. And you said, why do you keep doing that, Osher? And he's like, I don't know, I don't want people to take me out. And you did and then what would happen? You did what CBT, what psychologists do to people with catastrophic thinking. You said, and what would happen? Well, people online would pile on me. And then what would happen? What? Well, then what would happen? I don't know. And what he means is I would feel bad. And for you were saying, so what? Like, so what if people pile on you? But I think, not to speak for Osher, but to speak for myself, there's a couple of reasons. One is more careful these days. I'm more careful. Okay, so let me just go back to where I was. I am more careful because I think it's appropriate to grow up into wear the suit that you've been afforded. I have a platform. I have people from autistic 5-year-olds to atheist 85-year-olds from fucking Warsaw to Florida who like my work. It is appropriate that I take into account my audience and my power. And then there's this other thing, which is that we now live in a time where you can say something that comes from your heart that you really believe as a person who cares and loves the world, wants the world to be a better place, a progressive who wants better conditions for people who suffer and all that. You can say something from the heart, like maybe shouting at men that they're bad is not the way to make male violence go away. And that can be taken off you, put into a headline, and this has happened to me, as you know, and people that you consider your peers and friends, including some of your actual peers and friends, will pile on you in public. And it is hugely emotionally traumatic. And we can talk about why, because I don't quite understand it. But I promise you it is. For most people.
I've been there, as you know, as well. I would say a couple of things about that. On the first question of you have fans from Warsaw to Florida.
I don't know if I got in Warsaw.
From 5-year-olds.
Warsaw idiots have no taste.
5-year-olds to 85-year-olds, and you have to, grow up and wear a suit and think about them.
Yeah.
I would say have sufficient faith in them.
Yeah.
And give them enough credit.
Oh, I'm not exactly
that they're
beige.
That they're capable of understanding the fallout from part 2 of your concern, which is the bullshit that we all know happens when someone says something that contravenes the way that you're supposed to talk about something. The members of your industry or your peers who will disavow you because a headline said that you said something, they weren't worth having as friends in the first place. They might be powerful enough to actually change your career, but they're probably not.
Oh, no, probably not.
And in terms of your fans, to some extent, I think we're in a problem of... there's a collective action problem here. If everybody just changed the norms and said, fuck it, I'm just going to try to be as honest as I can.
Absolutely. And I think it's happening.
I'm going to call it as I see it. And some people are going to try to misrepresent it because some people are mischievous. But I have faith that enough people will look to what I'm actually saying and we'll go back to the original text and we'll listen to my work and we'll read my work and we'll listen to my voice and we'll try to understand and we'll know that I have a close enough relationship with them as a creator that they're going to have faith in my general decency. Like if everybody did that, then of course there'd be no problem, but it's a bit hard to stick your head above the parapet as the only
So I guess
one.
there's a part A and B from that point as well. The part A is when I say emotionally traumatic, it triggers something in you that to be an Osher or to be me, really a big part of why I'm me is something in me wanted to be liked and loved and respected. You don't do what I've done if you didn't have an engine that says, if I do this, they'll clap me and they'll like me and they'll respect me and they'll adore me. And I'm very aware of all that, and I'm aware of the idiocy of that. But it's a part of my engine. So when people call you, say that you're something that you don't recognize in yourself, a bigot or, supporter of genocide or whatever, then it's just emotionally traumatic in and of itself. And it's and this because this is what the chilling factor of cancel culture is, that people pretend doesn't exist, which is that basically people avoid emotional distress. And I am someone who I now am off social media, but I am tempered by the possibility of public shaming, regardless of my intellectual understanding that it is unjust and unjustified and meaningless and fuck 'em. I will just avoid that.
Yeah.
Although I don't all the time when I'm really agitated by something. The part B is part of what I care about as I get older, and always have actually. And people, some of my critics, not that I'm particularly focused on critics at this point in my life, but some people, especially in Australia on the far right, because I've done a couple of, for your overseas listeners, I've done a couple of political bits of satire that really, there was a particular song I wrote about a cardinal of the Catholic Church over here that landed in our culture in a way, I don't want to overstate it, but there's not many.
It was massive.
There's not many times a piece of satire have landed like that.
He was the most senior religious figure that Australia has probably ever produced.
And I just wrote a song about him not coming home
about
to face a royal commission. It was to
face the music essentially on accusations of child sexual.
Not of him.
Not of him. That he was complicit in a cover-up.
He was complicit in a cover-up. And I won't relitigate that song. It was designed to raise money for survivors of abuse to go to Rome to watch him testify, and it worked in a big way. And I'm proud of it, but I could have a big conversation about the ethics of that sort of act. But
you mean you could have a self-critical conversation about whether or not you were right to wade into it? Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll get to that if you're interested. But what was I talking about?
Sorry.
No. With that context, I have a reputation for being an agitator, but actually the sum total of my 20 years of work is really broad and loving. I'm mostly known for Matilda and songs like Not Perfect and White Wine in the Sun, and my show Upright, which made many people across the world cry. And I talk about and I'm also known for my critical thinking stuff. All through my comedy career, I was doing stuff about, like literally stand up about post hoc ergo propter hoc, Latin names for logical fallacies, like super nerdy stuff. I wrote a song called In Defense of the Fence before Twitter was invented that said, we divide the world into terrorists and heroes, into normal folk and weirdos. It was about binary thinking and how bad it is. I've been banging this drum for a long time. I want to keep banging that drum, and I need to keep as many people as possible in my... I don't need to. I would like to not ostracize anyone at all if I possibly can help it. And even if they're wrong, there's strategy. Unfortunately, we live in a dumbass, out of context, binary thinking, tribalized, public shaming fuck show of a world. And if I want to put good ideas into the world and try and reach across that divide, I have to not lose one side. Otherwise, what good can I? You're trying, but your audience self.
You're trying, but you're failing, Zeps.
I don't think you are, but you've definitely lost some people. Your audience self-selects, and people are like,
Look,
and you're right. Fuck them if they don't want to listen to you.
I think you're right that there's a meta conversation to be had about the way that we have conversations, right? And
that's the only one I ever have. I'm always 2 degrees away from an actual conversation about a real thing.
You're just a brain floating above a head. Yeah, but
I'm in a vat that contains a vat that contains a brain.
But this is valid, and obviously what I'm up to on this show is not about actually caring all that much about the things that I talk about on the show when I'm having an argument with somebody about some culture war issue. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is model the way that we have conversations, show examples of the ways that we can talk about things in a way that might be constructive that other people can then take away and use. So it is a meta conversation. However, it's very difficult to model the way that we should be having conversations unless you actually do the work of modeling the way that you're having the conversation. So if you think of the 2 levels, right, there's the meta level on which we can talk about having conversations.
In theory, you just wade in and go, let's talk about Israel and Gaza, let's talk about trans people. I'm talking about...
Well, I mean, you sometimes do that, and you sometimes then, to your credit, and I think... before I get to that, because I do want to touch on that, when you mentioned that you have a need, and Osher has a need to be liked, and so that kind of increases the emotional valence of public shaming. Do you also have a need to be understood?
Oh, well, okay, so if I can just take that and go meta, because I think it's important, we all have a need to be liked to different degrees. Some of us have little broken brains that need it real bad, and they're called actors. And some are like you and seem to be like, they can take me or leave me, although I think some of that's bluster. I think some...
Oh, it absolutely is, and I wouldn't deny it as well. But the reason I asked the question about being understood is that I've had conversations with actor friends who very much want to be liked, but they don't actually want anyone to know anything about them. Right? And I'm sort of the reverse. For me, feeling like I'm understood and seen and that the truest things that I care about are seen and understood about me is my being liked.
It's
that
all
is my
narcissism.
Version of it's all narcissism. It's all narcissism. It's just your flavor of narcissism. Mine is that I don't actually care whether they like me, but I do care whether they respect me and sort of kind of see me.
And by the way, just to unpack the narcissism, to get into broadcast and stuff, it's not narcissism. You do need to believe that there are places for stories and places for commentary, and you need to identify in yourself a capacity for it. And at that point, you're like, well, I'm doing it now, and I want to be understood, or I want to be loved, or whatever it is. I think we all want to be understood. And where this is incredibly salient in this conversation is where I'm a progressive. I don't think anyone could look at my work and think I'm a sort of conservative, whatever. I'm a progressive lefty, I guess, although I don't like the binary in politics because I agree with some things and not others. That our left-wing party, blah, blah, blah. But so I see myself as progressive, but a lot of progressive people seem to think that the sum total of their obligation as someone who desires change in the world is to say they desire change in the world and signify their moral righteousness whenever an issue comes up. And there's not really a consideration of utility. And when I say that because the main thing that's happening since we've got social media and we've found ourselves in these little bubbles is that we are getting further and further apart. And yet we all know that we want to be understood. And we seem to have so little capacity to go, well, if I want to be understood, that person might want to be understood. So hold on. If that person wants to be taken at their word, understood to be complex, understood to be someone who's come from where they've come from and carry their pain, maybe I shouldn't scream at them that they're a fascist bigot, because maybe if they want to be understood and they don't recognize in themselves a fascist bigot, then telling them they're a fascist bigot's not going to land, and I'm going to push them away and make them less likely to understand me. Our incapacity to do 7-year-old level empathy.
But no, I don't think. I think there's a strategic difference between the way that you think that goals should be achieved and the way that those people do, which is that
they're going to storm the castle. They're going to burn the fucking shit down.
Yeah, understanding would be nice, but at a moment where fascism is at the gate, in a moment at which Trump and the far right in Europe are about to overtake the world, at a moment of climate crisis, at a moment...
At that moment, I get brave, I pick up my phone and I say something mean. Then what? What? You want to storm the fucking castle? Find a castle and storm it. Put your phone down. But anyway, we've had 10 years of this. So sure, your strategy is, this hypothetical person, your strategy is, I'm not going to try and understand a homophobe. Why would I try to understand a homophobe? They're a homophobe. Fuck them. There's an amazing documentary about Israel Folau, which helps you understand where Israel Folau comes from. Sorry for overseas. This is a rugby player who got completely, had his career taken away because he was a homophobic Christian. And the documentary is made by my sister, full disclosure. And most of my liberal friends didn't watch it. I don't want to hear about why we should empathize with a homophobe.
I was the only person on the public broadcaster at the time who was trying to inject some pro-Folau, content. I was on my radio show and I got a lot of shit for saying, it
doesn't have to be pro-Folau, but pro-understanding his origins.
Yes, exactly. It's not just understanding his origins, but also if you sincerely believe that the creator of the universe has written a book...
Totally.
You should take it seriously.
By the Rugby Australia threatening to fire him if he speaks on behalf of Christ again... Obviously, he thinks, well, that's God testing me. I mean, have you read the Bible? God does that shit all the time.
And it's a bit... The case I was really making, which rubbed people the wrong way, was that the boundaries of conversation should be drawn wider than we're drawing them. We're drawing them too tightly so that his expression of saying that homosexuals are sinners, he wasn't saying that they should be beaten. He was saying that homosexuals and fornicators are going to hell.
And
atheists are going to hell.
And people who borrow money or something.
That's
Jews?
right.
I think you said Jews. Not Jews.
The idea that the contours of public conversation should be drawn so tightly that expression is verboten is, I don't think, the most conducive way of running a civilization.
There seems to be a sort of utopian fantasyism. So back to your it's a matter of strategy. I think the thing to do is more understanding. They think the thing to do is pick up weapons or weapons of words. Totally get it. There have been times throughout history where beheading the aristocracy has been the only way through. I would argue it had been good if they'd stopped cutting off so many heads, and that it was we should learn from such revolutions that you should be careful about how many heads you cut off.
Well, their example is usually Nazis, right? I mean, D-Day. Do you want to understand Hitler? Do you want to sit down and have a cup of tea with him and go okay, so you're misunderstood and I'm misunderstood. Let's all sing Kumbaya.
There's time for war, and we're getting closer to war. America is getting closer to some sort of civil war because that's where you'll end up if you don't take the opportunity to understand the opposition earlier, right? Obviously, when I'm saying... you've got to understand the opposition. I don't just mean the Jews of 1932 in Poland needed to understand Nazis. The Nazis needed to understand the Jews of Poland in 1932 because we are used to looking back in the time and going, there were baddies and victims, but the German people thought the Jews were the baddies, right?
Yeah.
The German people thought the Jews were the baddies. Ring any fucking bells? Anyway, so if your policy is it's time to pick up weapons against these people, the time for understanding has passed, then you've had 10 years of showing me your social justice warrior flex on Twitter. You've had 10 years now. How's it fucking going? How's it going? Is it getting better? Is it getting better? Are you doing a good job for your progressive goals by doing this shit on Twitter? I don't know. My suspicion is it's getting worse. That we've lost people we had. We've got people getting less LGBT friendly because they've been shouted at for 10 years.
Yeah, there's a significant decline.
And it goes the other way too. They're shouting at us.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope it goes without saying that I think the idiots over there calling us libtards for wanting progress are worse. But just because other people are worse doesn't mean you don't have any notes to take about your own conduct.
Yeah. Yes, I think what's important to understand is that we often misunderstand that. It's funny. You talk to someone about the root causes of terrorism, for example, and everyone is quite comfortable understanding that there are root causes for things, that people aren't psychopaths, right? That, like, you know, there's a reason why the 9/11 hijackers did what they did that have to do with more than just them being psychopaths, that have to do with foreign policy, that have to do with the conditions in which they were raised, you know. Yet when it comes to us, like, we're not quite so willing to pull that chess move and say, well, maybe the reason why Trump exists and the reason why the alt-right exists and why there's a pushback against, I don't know, transgender rights is because we've participated in creating conditions that are conducive to that. And that is a reaction to something.
It doesn't mean it's your fault. It just is what it is. And pretending it's just baddies and goodies is not going to get you anywhere. So this question, our capacity to extend our empathy in ways that are kind of, that gel with our understanding of our worldview, but not extend our empathy to where it's really hard. The example I always use is, and this is me 10 years ago, right? I haven't had a big transformation, but I've just been slowly thinking more and more about this. So I know I sound like I'm very didactic. I don't want to lecture people, but please, like, let's think about ourselves. I find it very, very easy to think about a 19-year-old black guy on death row in fucking Alabama. And that guy grew up in a terrible neighborhood. His uncles and no dad and his brothers and, you know, were all drug dealers. And when he was 11, he was a runner.
I love this racist caricature, by the way.
No.
What black people's lives are like.
No, this is a guy on death row.
Okay.
Why I'm telling you why he's on death row. These are the conditions. And he stabs someone when he's 18 in a drug deal. And he goes to death row. And, like, we as progressives have absolutely no problem going, that guy shouldn't be on death row. What chance did he have? Right? But some guy marching in Charlottesville in beige pants to save a statue is marching in Charlottesville for the same reason, because that's his inputs. That's his fucking inputs. You don't choose, you know, this comes to the fact we live in a deterministic universe and people don't understand this. But that guy is that tiki torch marching guy for the same guy, the stabby guy is the stabby guy, for the same reason that I'm a good musician. It's just what they became. And if you can't extend your empathy to the Charlottesville guy, but you can to the black guy, I understand it, but you're wrong. You have failed in your in what I think is a human obligation to extend your empathy. If you're going to extend empathy due to causality, due to someone's inputs, you don't get to choose.
I mean, I think it's so. What there could be a couple of mechanisms going on here, right? One is the narcissism of small differences, right? This is always the case, that the Sunnis and the Shia will fight each other more than the Muslims will fight the Christians. Or, you know, there's always like, I am closer to the tiki torch guy than I am to the terrorist or the guy on death row.
But by that logic, a black guy from Alabama should be more sympathetic to the tiki torch guy. I understand, by the way, that there is.
I think there's a second thing going on. Do you want to finish that thought?
There's a valid riposte that there's a power difference between those two people, but that is that is where we keep going wrong on the progressive side of things. It's like, yeah, but just because he's got more power, because he's got a tiki torch, he's still just a guy who is an outcome of his inputs. He's no more to be blamed.
Well, also it elides the fact that elites and powerful people are currently on the left, like,
well, yeah.
Right? I mean, you would have to say that the cultural center of gravity is owned by the left.
Tell me about the second thing, and then I want to get back to your sort of original setup of this, because it's really interesting.
So the second thing was just that, in addition to the proximity of the other person, in other words, is embedded the idea that they could have done otherwise, and without going down a whole free will, rabbit hole, because that will take us another 3 hours.
Well into that,
but So I don't know if it's just a leap of imagination or if there's something actually ontologically true about this, but it does strike me that I have a greater capacity to become a raging lefty or a raging right-winger than I do to become a terrorist. There's more volition involved. Like they're both closer, and there's also, and I can somehow take more credit for not being that. Like I don't take a lot of credit for not being a pedophile. I don't take a lot of credit for not being a terrorist, but I do take credit for not being a hack, for not just endlessly writing bloviating conservative columns, or not being a facile wokester.
You're explaining why we make the mistake, but it's still a mistake.
Right.
I am very, very interested in to whom we extend empathy and to whom we extend agency.
Yeah.
And we tend to, and they are very, very related, we tend to extend empathy to those who rather condescendingly we do not permit agency, because we are happier to say, wasn't your fault. And do you know what the subtext of that is? You're a poor black person. I read condescension into people's capacity to extend empathy to some and impose agency on others.
Right.
So you give that Charlottesville guy agency.
It's Charlottesville, by the way.
Charlottesville guy. Charlotte is the state.
Only on your fourth time did I correct you.
That Charlottesville guy, you should have got me straight away. So it's like, as I've
just been sitting here going,
you tell me if
shall
I've
I
got
jump in or not?
No. Charlotte, because I
Charlotte's-
was thinking about Charlottesville.
But anyway, a tiki
is there a state
torch-
called Charlotte or a city called Charlotte?
There's a city called Charlotte in
right.
North Carolina. Right?
I don't know much about America. The Tiki Torch guy.
You're going there. Remind me to talk about your tour as well.
Okay.
I want people to come and see.
Well, yes, I'm coming to America.
Yeah.
We give him agency because and this is understandable and human. I'm just saying it's not, if you're really being harsh on your logic, if you're being brutal on yourself intellectually, which I think is the best thing you can be, it is not correct that you give agency to that guy just because he has what in our society we call power, like he has some money and whatever. But giving him agency is attributing to him a choice and stuff, and that's fine. But is it not condescending to then not give agency to a member of Hamas and go, it's not Hamas's fault?
I mean, it's funny that you even say that he has power, because I understand what you're pointing to, which is that
saying that's
a
what
white male is supposed to have more power.
I'm just
than
acknowledging
a woman
that
of color. But,
structure.
You know, he is the most shat upon version of the white male. The Appalachian or deep Southern redneck, like
totally,
MAGA.
But it doesn't
guy.
matter whether he's shat upon or powerful. He is still just Donald Trump. So I can't extend my empathy to Donald Trump, but where I fall is understandable. It's understandable I can't extend my empathy to Donald Trump, but I'm still wrong. I can actually. I have to really work on it. I have to work on it. But I
can imagine being an unloved person who's never invited to the in-club cocktail parties in New York.
He's also got a personality disorder. I feel sorry for his personality disorder.
Yeah.
So I get this. The reason I'm pointing this out is because I do it all the time, and I've thought about it a lot. And I'm like, why do I give agency to one type and deny another person agency? Oh, it's not their fault. I have to check myself and go, is it because I'm basically a bit racist and I think white people have their destiny in their hands, and an Arab has less? The
soft bigotry of low expectations.
The soft bigotry of low expectations.
Said. Yeah.
So I've checked myself and gone, okay, I have to do two things to fix this. I have to increase my sense of the agency of these people I see as victims, and I have to increase my sense of empathy towards those that I feel contempt for.
But is the first part of that the agency? You feel you need to do that even if the agency is illusory?
Well, the truth is no one has agency. But so in my worldview, as someone who doesn't believe in free will, on a deep intellectual, philosophical brain in a vat level, I know without doubt that these are emergent entities in the universe. They didn't choose their brains. They didn't choose their inputs. Donald Trump didn't choose to be Donald Trump. I am, as I say, I'm a successful, lovely father of two and musical genius for the same reason that a paedophile murderer is a paedophile murderer. I'm sorry. It's just the way the universe works.
But I'm not going to take that bait.
Don't make a headline out of that.
The agency is still the assumption of other people's agency is still critical then in allowing us to have a functioning culture.
What I say is it's as good as agency. The free will conversation is it's not just philosophical nonsense. It's true, but
it can be both.
Yes, yeah. But the way the universe operates, it's perfectly cromulent to act as if we have agency.
Right.
In fact, it's very useful to understand that people aren't to be blamed for exactly this reason. It is not It is not terrorists. A terrorist was a boy recently, just a boy with a ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he got given an idea and a trauma, and now he's a terrorist. And that Charlottesville guy was a boy with a ball, a beautiful boy with a ball. Yeah. And then he got given an idea.
May not have been beautiful. Tiki torch. We don't need to claim. Ugly. We don't need to claim. He was ugly. He was an ugly kid.
All little people are born. And so when you talk about imposing agency, I mean allowing agency and allowing and giving empathy. Isn't it funny that when's the moment when a child deserves no empathy?
Yeah.
Isn't it weird? We as humans go, innocent, guilty, 18. That's it. Like we're good. We're like, we just fool ourselves all the time to make ourselves feel better about the fact that we want to be angry at people.
Yeah.
And I get it. And sometimes we have to pick up a weapon and storm D-Day beaches.
Look,
you have to just let yourself.
Sometimes the person, even if they don't have agency, still needs to be defeated. In the sense that if you could kill baby Hitler, you would, right?
Yeah.
And baby Hitler hasn't done anything yet, but it would still be the right thing to do to kill him. The fact that this kind of dichotomy between agency and sympathy and condescension and soft, low expectations. You mentioned Gaza, and this is where I see this the most actually at the moment, is the kind of the lack of agency that the people who claim to be most sympathetic to Palestinians are giving to Palestinians and to Arabs, that all the agency in their eyes lies on the Israeli and American and like Jewish side of things. And there's an enormous, I feel, condescension and low expectations from Arabs. In the aftermath of October 7th, you were reported as having, there was this brief sort of social media snafu, right? Because you were doing a show in Canberra, and I went back and looked at the headlines. Actually are not that bad.
No, I don't think it was that bad. It felt bad. I just buried my mum the day before.
Yeah, exactly. Your mum had just died. Yeah. And this was an example, I think, of you being brave enough to say something that you knew could be misrepresented.
I was probably tired and I didn't have my guard up enough.
No, I think it's good that you did that, because you know what? There was a brief shit fight. A lot of people thought good for him, and then it went away.
Yeah. At the time it felt, there's people ringing and going, you have to make a statement. This is going to ruin your career. And I went to visit the Groundhog Day cast, which of course includes a very diverse cast. And this part of why I'm so sort of furious, not furious, the part of why I'm sort of a bit heartbroken by progressivism at times. Of course, most people are beautiful most of the time. I'm just talking about, I do want to clarify, I'm talking about the gestalt of social media. I'm not saying all my friends who care on Twitter are fuckwits. I'm just saying what emerges is unhelpful, I think. And anyway, we can get back to that. But
it emerges from them being fuckwits, but I'll let it pass.
Well, by, people don't take responsibility for the gestalt. It's very hard for a person to go, I just said one thing. Yeah, but you were one of 900 and now that boy's killed himself. So, that's your fault, actually. No, it's just me. No, you've got to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
If you're part of a mob that drives someone to suicide, you have to take it on board. And no one ever does. I've never seen anyone, and you've seen them. You've seen people kill themselves after pylons. I've never seen anyone come back and go, I did the wrong thing. Ever. I'm sure it's happened. I just haven't witnessed it. But I almost don't want to talk about that because I have to clarify what I said on stage, which I've not done. I was misquoted and I've never clarified what I said on stage.
Well, do you want to?
Not really, because then that will be taken. It's just another chance.
Right.
But basically, just to be clear, all I was I don't want to relitigate.
No, don't.
I was
Don't
just
if you don't want
commenting on a protest, and I was just commenting that maybe if those protesters knew the emotional impact their protest would have had on some Jewish people, they might not have done it. That's all I said. And I said the reason they didn't know is because we're in internet bubbles, and they might not have known. I was just doing a sympathy thing because the protesters got in trouble, and I was being sympathetic. I'm like, they probably didn't know how it was going to land, and isn't it a pity they didn't know? How could they have known? Well, if they weren't in a bubble, they would have known a bit more, and they still might have done the protest. And if they knew and they understood how Jewish people were feeling at that particular moment, this is very soon after October 7th, a month later, I absolutely respect people's right to protest. I'm not sure that in this particular situation it was the right moment, but I'm absolutely supportive of my friends who protest on behalf of the Palestinian people. But I also know for a fact, because I have asked many people, that there is a lot of information those people don't have about the situation, as some of my Jewish friends don't have a lot of information about the plight of the Palestinian people.
I mean, without going into this, what I took from that, and it going back to our conversation about the meta conversation versus the conversation, was that, and you and I, because you told me directly what you had said like the day after or something like that.
I sent you
when you were trying to ask for advice about how to respond to it. And what I only just thought of this, but what happened was
before you'd come out as a
raging,
blood-loving Zionist.
Yes, a raging. I could be an anti-Semite if you know, because Arabs are Semites as well. So.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
But what happened, I think, was that you were trying to have a level 2 meta conversation about the conversation.
Yeah. But people don't want to hear that.
Well, they misunderstand it. They don't understand what's being said. What you were saying was, at a time like this, it's worth acknowledging the limitations of our own epistemology.
Yeah.
It's worth
I used the phrase
humility.
epistemic bubbles.
Right. It's worth...
Which it serves me right for being listened to it because I'm being a wanker with my words.
It's worth understanding that certain symbols, like the Star of David or a Palestinian scarf or from the river to the sea or, you know, whatever it might be, they're going to land in potentially toxic and misunderstood ways. So just let's check ourselves a little bit and have as much empathy as we can. And that conversation about the conversation was misunderstood as being a conversation within the conversation.
I think there had been such a paucity of people saying, look, let's just be careful of our Jewish friends and how they're feeling right now, in the same way that I would say, without a fucking doubt, if someone had got on stage with a Star of David and had upset some of my Muslim friends, I would have said the same thing, without a doubt. Because what I'm interested in is how the epistemic bubbles in which we live affect our ability to extend our empathy to our own communities in really important, on-the-ground, damaging ways. So I want people to do everything they can to agitate for peace and in the world. And if you have thought about it and you've gone, if I do this, you know, I'll be showing support for these people, whatever, and then that's all fine. I would just ask us all, caution us all to look at something like America, ask whether we want to be there in 10 years. Do we Australians want, in this imperfect, really sometimes problematic multicultural democracy that is nevertheless almost as successful as the planet has ever known, notwithstanding increasing economic uncertainty, but it's still one of the better versions that has ever been. How do we make it better? And if we genuinely want to make it better, not just want to show our friends that we think the same as them, or not just get our feelings out, our very fair, very real feelings out, but if we're actually progressives, do you want to keep yourself in such a bubble that you hurt your neighbor in an effort to improve the life of someone on the other side of the world, the mechanism of which is elusive to me anyway? Because what your heart says, I want to stand up for people X, and that is fair. And your brain says, if I do this, it might help them in some way. I find it hard to measure. But your brain should also say, oh, and by the way, I just made a person in my own community feel incredibly hurt. And when they told me they were hurt, I said, I don't give a fucking fuck about your feelings. Then you need to consider whether you are actually being progressive, whether you're actually being ethical.
So the activist sort of progressive response to that, and just put aside Gaza for the moment because I think it's a bit sui generis, the case of Israel, but talk more generally about women's rights and gay rights and like the rights of people of color and so on, and anti-colonial thinking and like white privilege. The retort to that would be that, like, historically, yes, you can point to America right now and say, isn't it terrible that they're that divided? But historically, we've only ever gotten anywhere by fighting. And then once the people who are doing the fighting win, smug lefties like you and me can sit around going, well, why are they still fighting? They shouldn't be fighting. They should be understanding each other. And the fighters say, well, yeah, but you only have the women's rights and the gay rights that you currently have because we fought.
There's two assumptions there. One is this is like that 2024 division in America or 2024 division is can be informed by history. That's an assumption, might be right. And the other is that the aggressive, angry fights are the things that changed it in history. Now, the first one, I think this is unprecedented because I think there's always been tribes, there's always been fighting, but I think the thing I'm pointing to, which is epistemic bubbles caused by nefarious algorithms, maybe nefarious isn't the word, damaging algorithms, we have been hacked by social media.
And we can talk about that, and I do want to...
I'm only talking about
right, that. But one could concede that without conceding the point about activism more broadly. You could say that there's something uniquely pernicious about the way that we're having conversations, but you could just fall back and say, well, then we should have conversations that are more civil. And yes, we should stop being uncivil to each other. We should stop being unempathetic. But we have to draw a line in the sand and say, you're not going to pass laws about what teachers can teach children about, gay people or something like that. Yeah. Right? And that's the line in the sand that I'm going to draw.
Okay, so this is where being meta is difficult because this is where the meta becomes not very useful. But firstly, I would say I'm not a very good progressive. I'm not a very good activist. I've had my moments. I do my things, but mostly I want my kids to be happy and I worry about my siblings and the various turmoils and troubles of my life and the people around me. But I would hate any listener to think what I'm saying is you activists have to settle down. I am tone policing, by the way, because tone is unbelievably impactful. But I just want to make it clear, I think I'm not someone saying let's slow progress down. I'm saying let's speed progress up by getting better at it. So that's my thesis, right? That's the meta. If 10 years of shouting at people on Twitter increase the distress of trans people, then what are we doing?
And
does it?
And reverses public support for gay marriage.
Exactly.
which is declining.
If 10 years of telling white people they're white supremacists, let's not even litigate the truth or otherwise of that claim. If you say, if you're a white person, you've benefited from historical white supremacy, therefore deep down you're racist, whether you feel it or not. That was interesting. I found that interesting, a proposition. Okay, what happens if you tell the entire world's population of Western white people that they are implicitly racist by benefiting from a white supremacist society? Maybe it will, I don't know, maybe it'll shift something. Maybe it'll make things better. When's the check-in? I suspect when you tell people they are something that they don't recognize in themselves, you isolate yourself from them. I suspect that history won't read that as a win, as a bit of rhetorical as an idea. And let's not pretend that's grassroots. That's an idea that came out of, highfalutin postmodern papers. I thought it was interesting. I can take on board that, but most people won't like that. That's not a nice feeling, to be told when you're not a racist that you're a racist, like when you don't feel like a racist, So let's check in on that. How's it going? How's all this going? My argument is, and it's actually genuinely a question, I obviously feel a bit anxious about it, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it, but is it working? Is the way we go about
the answer to that could be no, it's not working, but the reason why it's not working could be
we're not going hard enough?
Refusal. Well, if we're about apportioning blame and agency...
Well, it doesn't matter who's to blame. If it's not working, it's not working.
Right, but the activist's position could be, of course it's hard to get people in positions of privilege to recognise the unjustness of the status quo. Like, the old saying, it
is hard. The question is it impossible, or is the version we're doing the best? Sorry.
Yes, the old line is it's very hard to get someone to understand something that their paycheck depends on them not understanding.
Yeah.
And so I take your point. There may be, and obviously I believe there are better ways, but it may also be the case that, white people are just really resistant to actually grokking how much easier it has been for white people.
So the theory is, let's tell them more that they're racist. Tell them for another 10 years, and maybe that'll crack them. I suspect what you're going to do is lose. You're going to because to the other point I made, let's litigate history and the great progress we've made in the last 100 years and analyse. And I'd like to read a paper on this. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm sure it's probably more than a paper. There's probably books about it, and I haven't seen them. But to what extent is progress correlated with people telling people they disagree with that they're evil? Like, is it mostly people saying, you're evil, be better? Or is it mostly people going, you and I are the same. Let's be brothers. What is the...
we know the answer to that because we know that
except
society
it's not all the latter. There is... But it is mostly the latter. And in the absence of the latter, nothing happens but war.
Yeah. My general diagnosis or analysis would be that you start with the torches and the flame throwing, and then the moment you've got people's attention, you pivot to empathy. That's what the most successful civil rights movement in the history of the world. I was actually thinking of gay marriage. I would say that's probably the fastest pace of change in terms of people's attitudes, in terms of actually shifting the center of gravity of people's attitudes, would have to be between the 70s and the 2020s, like that half century of gay rights. And it happened initially through violent protest in rejecting, police crackdowns and so on. And then the moment the gay activists had everyone's attention, they said, actually, we want equality. We want the same things that you all do. We want to not just be discriminated against when we're renting an apartment. We want to be able to go and see our loved ones in the hospital. We want to be able to share our estates and so on.
Leave our... And there's... it's so complicated. And I do sometimes think people listening to this just might be like, what are they fucking talking about? Like, some people don't really understand the premise that I think I have inherited from the last few years, which is that social media as a place of discourse is doing genuine macro damage, right? Anyway, I was just thinking, do people even know what we're sort of talking about?
Well, why don't you talk to that hypothetical person who's in your brain? Because I'm not sure on what level you think that they wouldn't understand it, because I do understand it. But do you want to just articulate what it is that you think they're not getting?
Some progressives are like, we're getting it done, man. And I'd love to be wrong. I'd love my read to be wrong. But I think the politics of America... Yeah,
I don't think that they think that they're winning, but I do think that they think that if they laid down their arms, they would be completely trampled by the right.
Yeah, so I think it's much more causal than that. I think the far left and the far right have created each other and will keep each other getting more and more extreme.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And because just look at it in the micro, you know, just look at it as think about your dinner, your Thanksgiving dinner, you know, like how does it go? Like social media is a dehumanizing mechanism. That's the main problem, because actually we don't talk to each other. People are much better than they are on social media. People are really great. But I look back before I quit Twitter and look at, you know, when Trump was getting in the first time and Brexit was happening, I was just spitting. I mean, it was well-crafted, funny, not sweary, but I was just throwing my anxiety out into the world about people who'd vote for Brexit. I say breakfast every time I mean Brexit. People who, like, it wasn't cruel or personal. It was just useless. Just useless signalling my rightness. I was just signaling. I'm doing it now, you know. Probably. Well, I hope I'm not.
No,
just
I don't think
it
you
now.
are. I don't think you are, because there are ways of signaling one's rightness, and obviously I would have this bias being a podcast host. But
I'm just being right. That's different.
My bias would be that there is no substitute for a long form verbal conversation. That there is, you know, there's art perhaps, but there's no way that 160 characters is gonna, you know, you can't add up all of the tweets into the same duration as the conversation that we're having and yield the same outcome, because there's a dynamic that happens in live conversations.
And just the psychopathy of social media engagement, if that's where most of our engagement is happening, it has to be bad. And what is interesting, and if you think I'm, and I am criticizing progressives because I feel like they're the people I can talk to, or we are the people I can talk to. What blows my mind is how clearly people can see the corrosive impact of social media and internet bubbles on the other side.
Yeah.
And they can see it in everyone. So most people go, oh yeah, look at QAnon. Those people are driven bonkers. But they can look at J.K. Rowling and go, look how she got, you know, she said that and then they piled on her and it's all become, she's been radicalized. And they can see, I don't know if she's been radicalized, but, you know, you can see the storm that's come out of the psychopathy of the interactions. That just wouldn't happen offline.
That's right.
And you can see choose your thing that you think has gone a bit bonkers. If you're a progressive who's mostly like up for everything, choose one thing where you can see it, right? But the closer it gets to home, I'm not contributing.
I mean, we're all like that though, aren't we? I mean,
I've tried not to be, and I've corrected my behavior.
Right.
By way of trying to model what a grown up.
I just mean across a large number of metrics, we think that we are special and that other people are mistaken.
We are the hero and victim.
Yeah, of course,
I'm the hero or
victim of my own story. I mean, it's one thing that I found really interesting about Megan Phelps Roper and
she's
the witch trials
piece of work. That's a joke. She's very, very, very special.
The witch trials of J.K. Rowling was her linking of her experience at the Westboro Baptist Church
amazing, right?
with the witch hunting of J.K. and like the fact that even just, you know, this may be slightly tangential to the question about social media, but the fact that the cast members of Harry Potter disavowed J.K. Rowling on the basis of her activism, you know, when you know that if they sat down with her and had a cup of tea and they talked for half an hour about their concerns and she talked about hers, I'm sure they would find some common ground.
But they're just under pressure to perform, because not only are we compelled to perform, we're pressured to perform. Like I'm on some big blacklist of celebrities who haven't said the right thing about Israel and Gaza. Like there's a list. I love it when there's lists of Jews. That always
it's good.
It's good.
It's good. Great time. You know you're on the right side of history.
I saw
when
Instagram. A friend of mine was on a thing called Zionists in Music. Or something. Someone's done a list.
I was on a list. Yeah, I was on a list in the aftermath of
October 7th. Just a genuine list of Jews.
Of Zionists in
the media. Being alive, having. I mean, they must be really young. I think we grew up in the shadow of the Second World War. Imagine being like, oh yeah, I'm going to put another Jew on this list.
Oh no, I think they can play a language game, and they go, it's not about.
But
It
it's
has
a
nothing to do
list
with
of
Jews.
Jews.
No.
I think they might have numbered them.
It's a list of Zionists.
They numbered
Tim.
the Jews.
It's a
I wonder if they made them write it on their arms. I mean, it's
no. They think that they
unbelievable.
think that there's a very clear delineation between Zionism.
But actually, I don't.
There are Jews who aren't Zionists, and there are Zionists who aren't Jews. Therefore, they're not anti-Semitic.
I actually
Considerable overlap.
I actually I wrote a song many years ago called the Peace Anthem for Palestine, right? And you wouldn't put it out there now, and I suggest you don't go look it up. But it was back when I was edgier, and and off the back of that song, I got unbelievable feedback, even back just this is early YouTube, right, from Jews and Muslims. Really passionate feedback, because the song was just like the lyric went, "We don't eat pigs, you don't eat pigs. It seems it's been this way forever. So if you don't eat pigs and we don't eat pigs, why not eat pigs together?" And it's like it was deliberately, obviously trying to explain why dark comedy is comedy. I won't go into that. And it was obviously not laughing at the thing. It was just pointing out that they're the same religion within 600
narcissism of small differences again.
Edit. It's just a sort of bit more swordy guy changing the rules.
Yeah.
But they...
A lot of hummus and falafel on both sides.
Yeah, well, and covering of hair and cutting off foreskins and not eating pork and so on and so forth. And I just, I was in my phase of writing, my atheistic phase. But because of that, I started hearing, and it was amazingly compelling to hear from Jews and Palestinians. In that time, there was, I can't remember what year it was, but there would have been an invasion around then. And it started a journey.
What do you mean an invasion? Like an intifada? There would have been some violence.
But there would have, there would have been some violence. It was 2000.
It's a pretty safe bet if you're talking about the Middle East that there's going to be some unrest.
And it started I'm sort of an autodidact in everything I do. I couldn't write a good thesis on that region of the world, but I'm 20 years in to being pretty interested. And I find it very, very hard to, even if I felt no fear that I was going to get called disgusting things on the internet, which I pretty much do because fuck them, honestly. But even with none of the shaming pressure, the cancel culture pressure of social media and of being a public figure and an easy target and all that, I would still find it hard to talk about. I mean, we've talked about it a bit, and I
it's very hard. I mean, of course it's hard. It's the most complicated and intractable problem in the world.
I'm incredibly shocked. By the way, and I'm anti-religious, right? So I don't like Islam. I don't like religion. I think it's terrible. I mean, Judaism's sort of religion, but it's sort of culture, and Islam's sort of religion and sort of culture, but Islamism is like the worst thing ever. There's like, do we have to say that? Like, Islamism's like a really, really fucking bad set of ideas, right? It's really bad. And like fundamentalist Christianity is too, and especially was back in the day when they used to like march through the Middle East killing people, right? It's all bad. And there's all this geopolitics. And I refuse to be told that I have to wave a flag about something that I've been reading about for 20 years and I'm really, really feel sick about. You know, if you told me today, right now, that you're a genie and all I have to do to have peace in the Middle East is slaughter my own children and then kill myself, I would do it today. I mean, of course you would, as a good utilitarian.
Would you?
Yes. I would hate it, but I would do it. If you could absolutely convince me that the sacrifice of me and my children, of course I would. It would take you too, bro. I don't know. What would you? How could you not?
I'm just thinking that thought experiment through.
It's not very nice to my kids.
I'm not.
Sorry, Violet. Sorry, Casper.
Sure.
I love you.
Yeah, I suppose I would. I suppose I would after sleeping on it. I know what you mean.
Of course, you'd have to. If you could save 1 million lives by the sacrifice, of course you
Can we just get to ethics then and atheism and the cosmos from here? Or do you have something else to say about the Middle East? Yes, but I just want to say,
the idea that I'm being morally judged for not being online and making some sort of statement of adherence to a binary, to some version of some fucking child's view, I just will not have it. And fuck you. Fuck you for putting me on a list and saying I deserve to not sell tickets to my beautiful shows that I work hard on because I didn't say what you want to hear. Like, what a gross world. You don't want to live in that world. You do not want to live in that world. So anyway, that's my little bit of like, grr.
I mean, they want to live in that world if they get to write the list. We all kind of do.
But then they'll be on a list. Do they not understand they'll be on a list?
No, they don't. And in actual fact, the kind of Voltairean idea of I object to what you say, but I shall defend to my death your right to say it.
Oh, they don't think that
It's not very popular.
No.
It's just never been very popular. Like, I think we small
I believe
liberals,
in it really, really, really hard.
Yeah, I know. But
I mean,
it's quite a recent...
God,
the
let's not have
Enlightenment
that
is pretty
conversation.
recent. You know, and it's been an elite group of mainly Scottish philosophers who were like, you know, here's a good idea. And then the places that took on that idea became fabulously
Flourished.
wealthy, and the Industrial Revolution and all of that.
cured slavery and
Yes.
created democracy and
That's right.
it's a good set of ideas.
Good set of
science,
ideas.
the idea that we should test our beliefs against the veracity of the
Absolutely.
world.
Great ideas. You know who hates those ideas?
Nearly
80% of people everywhere. You know, it's like...
Because they're hard, man. They're hard.
Yeah.
There is privilege in all of this. But I want that privilege for everyone. That's why I've written my book. It's, you know, like, I want everyone to be able to have these conversations. And not everyone has the time or resources. But that's the goal is for more and more people to be able to think more and more metally about their ideas. I talk a lot about in my family. I don't talk a lot. We have discussed with my kids metacognition, that there's people who have thoughts, and then there's people who have thoughts about their thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's really important to have thoughts about your
Where
thoughts.
are your feelings in all this, Tim?
Fuck my feelings. Fuck all your feelings. Feelings are for art and
That's what I'm saying.
storytelling and
That's what I'm
love
saying.
and your family. Feelings aren't
That's what
for
I'm saying.
decision making.
No, I'm not implying they are. I'm
My
just...
feelings are-
I'm
you wanna-
interested
you want
because...
feelings? Go watch Matilda, bitch.
In my... Yeah, but that's
Read
what...
my book. My book will make you cry.
This is what I'm getting to. I mean, when my kids were little, and I'm sure I've told you this before, you know, we would listen to When I Grow Up, and I had the book of When I Grow Up, and I would read it to them in the evenings before they went to bed. And there's so much heart, and there's so much it really tugs at the heartstrings, especially I think if you're a parent of young kids. The idea, you know, there are so many beautiful lyrics in that song and in the whole musical about the way that children think about grown-upness, and it made me reflect on my own grown-upness and made me reflect on, you know, the sort of, I don't know, it allowed me to live vicariously through the eyes of my children better. And so you're a very big brain, and frequently people who have galaxy brains can find regulating their emotions or expressing their emotions difficult. But you obviously have this amazing outlet professionally and creatively. What's the link?
Well, I don't have trouble expressing. I don't know. I think one of the reasons I'm passionate about critical thinking is because of how much I love. I think it seems intuitive to me, and as I've got older, I've realized it's not, that to care about whether or not your feelings are accurate and to check your ideas and to, you know, is part of being more loving, is being more expansive, right? So we all want to put kindness in our Twitter bios, but kindness is not. It's easy to be kind and empathic to people you already agree with or people you already condescendingly feel sorry for. It's really hard to be empathic for people that say things you don't like, but that's the job. That's love. And I feel really right now teary about this. I know how people like me sound, and it's boring and it's privileged and blah, blah, blah. But I really I love storytelling, and I like telling stories about. The reason we make art is empathy. We makers of art, and that's everyone who ever tells an anecdote or a story or draws a picture. We spend time often trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes. I'm going to write a script. What would it be like to be a woman with a coercively controlling husband? I'm going to write her, and I'm going to write this 6-year-old girl who's brilliant but parents are cruel, and I'm going to write this guy who's stuck in a time loop, and I'm going to write songs for him, and I'm going to write a TV show about a guy who accidentally gets his brother's girlfriend pregnant, and I'm going to sit in all those things, all those people, all a road worker on the Nullarbor, an Indigenous. I'm going to sit in all those people's experiences. I'm going to slip into their shoes, and then I'm going to invite the audience in to slip into the shoes that I've built for these people, and the audience is going to sit with all these people, and so art is one of the many mechanisms by which we say, look, it's not all about how you feel. There's other people who have another set of experiences, and maybe that's the connection. Maybe I think it's all the same. Maybe I think that doing the work to decentralize yourself from the world, to make sure you're thinking outside your bubble, to have empathy for the people you find the hardest to have empathy with. Maybe I think this is all the same thing, slipping on other people's shoes.
I mean, I think what's nice about art that I'm jealous of you for and jealous of artists for is that it's almost another meta above the meta conversation, right? It's where you don't have to tell people to be empathic towards other people who they don't agree with, because the art, if it's good, is so universal that it transcends any difference, and it resonates with everybody, because everybody has been hurt, everybody has been little, everybody has been belittled, everybody has been, full of themselves, everybody has felt ripped off, everybody has pined for something, everybody has felt tenderness, everybody has felt,
because
fury.
It's a common experience.
Yeah.
Nearly always.
That's right. And the performance of When I Grow Up at the Royal Command performance. Do you remember that from
four little girls doing?
Well, I think it's the cast.
Oh,
so
right.
the year that it opened on the West End, when it won all of the Olivier Awards, there was one of these big Royal Command performance type things. And David Williams was there, and and there was this beautiful. I think it was a compilation. I think it was When I Grow Up, and then also the other number sort of mashed together into like this big 6-minute thing that now has a bazillion views on YouTube, which I should play for people in here actually if they haven't heard it. Were you there? Do you remember it?
No, I wasn't there.
No.
Is it good?
Do you remember it's fabulous.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Olivier Awards?
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was one of the better nights of my life, yeah. That was a beautiful night. It was a bit hectic afterwards, but so you get the awards, and that was all great because we won, we broke the record or whatever. And then afterwards you're thrust into a sea of people, and that you lose your friends and you don't get to talk to who you want. And it's like as close as I ever get to, But then there's this moment where you're spat out into the streets of Covent Garden, and Sarah and I looking pretty good actually. We were looking pretty sharp, tipsy, but we didn't have time to get drunk.
As good looking as a Charlottesville racist.
Exactly, that's right. And we walked through the streets past the Matilda Theatre to the Covent Garden Hotel, cobblestones and cold, and it's just, that was a big.
Were you holding
big
a statuette?
Yeah, holding an Olivier Award, yeah.
Was that
a beautiful night? And I don't often... I mostly couldn't recall that sort of thing. It just is a blur. But that one, I really, really clearly remember going, this is okay. This is the one. I'm allowed to be a little bit pleased. I'm not very good at letting those moments happen, but they're good. Yeah, that was a good one.
Was that a transition point?
I don't know. I'm just
like I'm always just I'm interested in those moments in life where basically what you're articulating there, where successful people are able to punctuate the sort of monotony of their rise in some way by going, you know what, this is actually different. Yeah. This is something this is something, like, not very many people get this.
I've had a really good time, but I'm not very good at punching the air. I would have like, given my time again, I'd punch the air a bit more. I'd be like, go you. I don't know. I always feel so lucky and like it's fragile, and I don't know.
Like, do you sit at the Tony Awards and go, I'm at the Tony Awards?
Awards are bullshit.
Like but there are
Tony Awards can eat my no.
You just had the misfortune to be in the same year as Kinky Boots.
I know that classic. Yes, that was a weird one. Yeah, but I mean, that's the other trouble with awards is, of course, you don't want to congratulate yourself too much, because
then you lose one and you have to say it doesn't matter.
You have to pretend it's a legitimate.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of really, really great times, and probably the ones I've shared with Sarah are, the best ones, and but it's twee to say, but probably having kids and stuff overshadows it. I mean, I love my job, man. Like, I've got
exactly.
A good job.
I always think it's like annoyingly schmaltzy to talk about kids and family, because my honest answer would be the same as well, which is like, the most important things in my life are my family.
One of your two twins.
That's right. Depending on the week, it could be. It toggles back and forth. But the reality is, it always sounds so phony when a politician stands up there and goes like, the hardest job in the world is being a mom. And everyone applauds, because that may be true. It's also incredibly common. It's also like an experience that almost everybody has. So, like, cry me a river. What's going to the Tonys, winning a bunch of Olivier Awards, being on the West End for 14 years straight, counting your royalty checks. These are not usual experiences. These are, like, it's worth pinching yourself and thinking this is weird. You don't have to dwell on that anymore, because I also want to talk about what you think about, I don't know, the universe and the cosmos and atheism, and how. And
we'll just do
a
quick one.
Let's just do a quickie.
Let's
just
have
wrap
a drink.
with. Wouldn't it be good? Anymore. Wouldn't that be nice? Famously an atheist.
Atheist, yes.
Was that waxed and waned at all in any way? Not never. Towards like the dogmas of the book, but towards
I don't
what the hell
I don't
the whole thing's about.
I don't have it in me. I don't understand the question.
Right.
I don't understand the question. Like, what do you mean? Is there a God? No one's ever defined it. Like,
well, let me define it for you. In a way that might be interesting to people. The universe is very, very, very big, and it's full of like lots of things, and those things are more unusual than if there was nothing. So it's interesting that it's here.
Yes.
It's interesting that
I'm with you very hard so far.
It's interesting that we're here.
Unbelievable.
It's interesting that stars that don't have to exist are spewing out all of these elements that then assemble themselves into conscious creatures crawling around the surface of a rock.
It's miraculous.
It's all quite peculiar.
Therefore, Sven the farting unicorn must exist.
Therefore, I'm with you on, it's probably unlikely that people nailed it 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. But I'm sympathetic to people who go,
there must be a cause.
Yeah, or maybe not even must be, but it's a bit fucking weird. A cause? It's a bit weird, like,
but it's
a bit woo-woo, the whole thing.
So,
and then therefore maybe I can tune into some universal consciousness / love / guidance.
Yeah, but now you're just saying words. Like, there's such lack of specificity in all of that. Even a Josh Zepp's version of that is just like, yeah. So what you're saying is stuff is weird, therefore stuff. Like, what? Okay, so fine.
Well, no,
whatever.
therefore,
Like, yes,
maybe the reductionist materialist definition of things, which is that there is nothing else apart from what science
but actually,
can demonstrate.
the materialist view, the atheist view, is kind of the most woo-woo because we just go, "Oh God, like we don't know yet."
Yeah.
Whereas the religious are the sort of materialist. There must have been a man to make it. You know, there must have been a thing, a bit like a watchmaker or a bit like a something. That they're the ones that need a word to create a cause. They're the ones who demand.
They think that's precisely why it's reasonable to be
That's
religious.
right.
They think it's
the trouble
absurd
is
to be.
Physics doesn't work that you just plug in X and call X God. Like, just leave it as X.
Right.
X, the primary cause of the universe is X, and solve for X. Working on it. A little spinny wheel.
Right.
Not God. God's the wrong answer. Well, if God's the right answer, you have to. I always say, does he poo? Like, give me one attribute of God that we can talk about. Just give me one. He answers prayers. Apparently not. He controls everything. I don't know. How do you disprove it? Like, it doesn't feel very controlled. Like, does he poo? Does he have hair? Does he have a cat? Does he like friends?
Does he have a cat?
Like, give me one attribute that you give me a claim, and I'll tell you why I don't believe in it,
Right?
Or why I might believe in it. But no one's proposed a claim since we got rid of all powerful, all knowing, since the
He's obviously
the problem
not.
of evil.
Yeah, there's the problem of
Yeah.
evil, teleology.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just feels so. It's funny, right? Because one of my God, I sound like such a cunt. Sorry, America. I'm coming to America. Come and see my
Yay.
shows. I'm not doing comedy, but it's always funny anyway. I one of the things I find frustrating about the world I used to see reflected on social media and stuff before I freed myself is sort of incuriosity. Like, people seem to just want to settle for something that makes them feel good, looked after, virtuous, righteous. And it's like, oh, come on, haven't you wondered?
Yeah.
Haven't you wondered why Israel Folau's Israel Folau? Have you even gone to look for why people think the way they think? Or haven't you, and I know that's really condescending because I know people are curious, and I'm just,
Well, of course,
I'm demanding that they're
Well, they
curious.
think you're the one who lacks wonder. They think, you're
Oh, sorry, but I just mean, like, in terms of politics and but back to I think it's funny because you could accuse me of being incurious about the prime mover, about the maker, because I'm like, I don't know, doesn't seem very interesting to me to introduce like hypotheses out of fucking nothing. Just to go, what if it's God? I'm like, well, give me a definition of God. This is a boring conversation. As I said when you were doing your, there's stuff, therefore maybe stuff. I said, therefore Sven the farting unicorn farted out the universe. It's just as good. Or, Kevin the snotty bear who snotted out the universe. So they're all fine. They're all placeholders for X. But really, if you want to talk about religion, you have to say, is it one of the is it one of the big three?
You don't have to.
And that's, you don't have to.
The interesting thing about wonder and curiosity is...
You don't need God for wonder. Check out the place. Have you... I have
Absolutely.
a poem called Storm. Isn't this enough?
I mean, so Carl Sagan and Richard Feynman and Richard Dawkins and
Mine
indeed
rhymes.
you.
Mine rhymes.
And yours rhymes. These are all people who are great at... what Dawkins would call unweaving the rainbow in his beautiful book, Unweaving the Rainbow, which is about the poetry of science. And there's an interesting move that often gets made nowadays, which is not by religious people, but by people who are interested in spirituality with a small s, more colloquially defined, right? So you might be talking about your crystals and your tarot and your astrology and your manifestation, where, if you think about your vision board, then, the universe will conspire to bring the secret into your life. And from their perspective, the reductionistic scientific account is stripped of wonder, is very matter of fact, and their position is like, there's no harm in having...
No, I get that.
a sense of
I get that,
mystery.
and I'm not really agitated by that. It is in my nature to find non-specific language unsatisfying for such beautiful, amazing stuff. I think if you go, the universe is wonderful, therefore tarot cards. I think you've missed some of the wonder. The universe is wonderful, therefore chi. It's like, well, okay, so the problems, it's become untrendy to criticize religion. Isn't it amazing how it was just the thing and then it just went away? But I think it's more important than ever to defend critical thinking and to defend applying critical thinking to spirituality, because I actually think it's gateway stuff. I do think it's all connected.
Do you think
I would like the world?
Do you think formal religions are more gateways to irrationality, or the woo-woo small s?
I don't really know, and I'd be guessing, and maybe the whole thing's bollocks. But don't you think the fact that most people who voted for Trump? So this is my theory.
Give it to us.
Criticize the
Lay
crap
it on
out of
us.
me. I think when we get more high resolution in fMRIs or whatever, in brain scans, we will be able to see how our brains, during their elastic phases, they're always elastic. I don't need to explain it neurologically. I think if you've spent your whole life subdividing your hard drive so that you believe things and don't believe them at the same time. So if you grow up thinking Jesus is real and answers my prayers, but also I'm not going to step in front of this bus, you understand that magic isn't real, but you believe magic is real, and you believe those two things at the same time, right? You believe basically in a materialistic universe in every action in your life, but then you have this other program running where everything's magic. And I reckon then a demagogue comes along like Trump, and you can hear that he's a slime bag, criminal, sexist, and sort of believe he's the second coming at the same time. You're basically primed to believe and not believe believe two things at the same time.
Interesting.
I wonder if religion teaches you to believe two things at the same time, and whether that might be bad in and of itself, not to mention just the evils of radicalization. Because religion tells you you're special and other people aren't, and that means you can kill them.
Right. I mean, for some reason, I find the tarot.
That was a bit of a long stretch.
No, I like the theory. I don't know how much credence I give it, but I certainly give credence to the idea
I don't need
that
your credence, bitch.
I certainly give credence to the idea which is an idea that you didn't come up with. So I'm giving credence to myself here and not to you. That the woo-woo stuff, the manifestation, that my brain can change the universe, and like astrology and stuff like that. It gets on my nerves more than formal religion does, because you only need one bullshit leap to be a believer in formal religion, and that is the creator of the universe wrote a book. But for this other stuff, you kind of need a whole Jenga puzzle, like an artifice of stuff that you have to keep believing in with no evidence. And it may even be worse than the dichotomy that you're talking about.
They don't believe the framing.
What?
They don't believe.
Like I think that if we're going to solve problems like climate chaos and save liberal democracy, we all have to be roughly on the same page. And in order to be on the same page, we need not just empathy, but we also need a respect for reason and rationality and evidence.
Here
and
we
if
are.
you junk
finally started the podcast.
Welcome to the show. G'day, humans. If you junk those because you think that it's cute and fun to do tarot cards,
there's a better way.
Yeah, you're untraining yourself in the skills that you need.
All I'm saying.
Yeah.
Either you believe that with the introduction of new evidence, you will change your mind, or you don't. And if you don't believe that it is not just a thing, but an important thing, as I do, that with the introduction of new evidence, I would change my mind about God, about anything. If you don't believe that changing your mind is a virtuous thing to do, an important and right thing to do in the face of new data, then we're fucked.
Would you change your mind about the opinion that you've been expressing about the importance of the need for empathy?
If I am basing my concern about progressive discourse on an observation that we are making the people we need to seduce less seducible.
Right.
We are sending people that we might have a chance of bringing into the fold of things we care about. We're sending it. We're
turning them off, baby.
Absolutely turning them off.
We're turning them off. What are you
I
doing?
really believe that. And if you said, Tim, you've just got caught up in your own epistemic bubble, that's not happening, mate. It's actually like, look at the positive changes. Look at Me Too. Look at more people of color in positions of power. Look at and actually that thing you're observing about people, that's just the fringe. I send me that data.
You just did a pretty good case of convincing me that you're wrong, because
I don't think that's
there is a growth of.
There is a growth.
We now have.
I think
the Supreme Court of the United States has a greater representation than the American population of people of color and women.
That wasn't done by shouting at each other on Twitter, though.
Well, got Trump elected, and he did a bit of it because he nominated a couple of women.
Yeah.
Well, a woman. Anyway,
a couple of women in the body of one woman.
a woman and a guy. The other woman was Obama's.
Yes. Look, I honestly, the worst thing that could come of, I'm pretty sure not dehumanizing the other. That's all I've been saying the whole time. Don't dehumanize the other. I'm pretty sure that'd be better.
But before we run out of time, I want to know about your book and your trip to the United States and your tours. Give me the pitch.
Okay. So I've given 3 commencement addresses in my time. I've been given 3 honorary doctorates among the shiny things I've earned.
You're a triple doctor.
I'm a doctor. I mean, it's all nonsense, but it's an honor, and I don't sneer at it. But obviously, it's just
do a little bit.
It's a stunt. But if you want to get an honorary doctorate, you give a speech, and I've made 3 of them. One at my alma mater, University of West Australia. One at another one, alma mater. Is that the word?
Yeah.
I don't speak good Latin, which is Edith Cowan University or West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, and another at a theatre school in England. And
I was really hoping one of your alma maters was in Charlottesville.
Charlottesville is a different place. You thought I was talking about Charlottesville. I was talking about Charlottesville. I've collated those speeches, Penguin, Random House, collated these speeches, and I've written essays kind of drawing a line across it and really just building some scaffold around my general humanist worldview, which is very evident in all my work. And I point to my work and I go, this is basically what I think about the world. It does have a bit of a defense of Enlightenment values.
Yeah, it's great.
And so that's coming out, not in America till next year or later this year, I think. But
and it's called
You Don't Have to Have a Dream, Advice for the Incrementally Ambitious.
You Don't Have to Have a Dream. When I heard that title, I thought that the point was you don't have to have a dream, but if you want to achieve anything in life, you'd better have a dream. But it's actually, when you read the book, you realize it's actually, you're saying literally you don't have to have a dream. Did you not have a dream as a child?
Nothing like the one I got.
Right.
I did what I said in the book, be incrementally ambitious, work with passion on what's in front of you, and you never know what's going to come out of it. I cared very much about making sure people watching Love's Labour's Lost in 1993 cried when the princess fell in love with the guy dressed up as a Russian. I just really, really wanted those people to enjoy the show.
Were you the princess or the guy dressed up as a Russian?
I was the musical director. And I'm deep down, I'm a princess dressed up as a Russian. And I wanted that. And I didn't think this is a stepping stone to something. This is a stepping stone to making... And when I wrote Matilda, I'm like, I want the people in Stratford-upon-Avon and the Christmas show of 2010 to love this show. And I actually, now I do it consciously. Now I check myself if I'm like, where's this going to lead? I go, no, that's not how you do it. You just make something good, you know? And it gets me in trouble sometimes because I don't think too strategically, but it's been really good for me.
Have you ever heard me bang on about sitting next to Frank Langella on a plane for 6 hours from LA to New York? He just shot Frost Nixon.
Oh, wow.
For which he went on to win the Oscar. And I was sitting next to him on a flight. I'd been brought out from New York to shoot a pilot in LA, and so they were flying me out fancy pants class. And I won't bore people again with it, but I faced a professional fork in the road at the time about whether or not to take one television show or whether to do another thing. And he said to me what you just said, basically. He said, look, the only piece of advice I can give you is that every decision I've ever made that was intended to be strategic blew up in my face. And every decision that I've ever made that I did for the love of it has ended up being strategically. He said, I've just shot this film where I play Richard Nixon, and I've been doing it on the West End, and it was really, of course I knew it from Broadway. But I did it on the West End because it started off West End. Like, I don't even remember what the theatre was where it started, but it was like a small London theatre that he did because he loved it. Then it went to the West End. Then it went to Broadway. Then it, then, and that's obviously stayed with me. Of course, there's
survivor bias
20
there.
years.
Some people might have an experience of being more strategic, and you get a lot of messages when you're young about setting goals. And I'm basically going, maybe not.
Yeah,
but. Taking advice from someone like me is such a load of crap because I'm just an outlier. Like, it's just nonsense.
Yeah,
There's no way to get,
yeah.
I just got lucky and I had some things that went well. Like, you're much better off taking advice from your aunt who's, got a community choir and
it's true, isn't it? It's funny. I remember watching, I think it was Russell Crowe who was at the Academy Awards, and he said, I just want to speak to all the Australian and New Zealand young people who are going into the creative arts and who think they might never be able to make it. I want to say to you, follow your dreams. It really is possible. And I was like,
of course, statistically, it's not.
I mean, of course, from the podium at the Academy Awards,
I
of course,
just won
in
$10 million by the lotto. And I just want to say to everyone out there playing lotto,
buy a ticket.
You buy a ticket. I bought a ticket and I won lotto.
Exactly. Therefore,
there's
it will for you as well.
17 logical fallacies. Yes, and one of the speeches in my book really does, again, they're all pretty rationalisty, and I hope they're not dampening of anyone's spirits, but one of them's addressed specifically to actors, and it's basically saying, you might think you want this, but this is not what you think it is. The people I know who are actors who didn't become Benedict Cumberbatch are doing all these things, and they're happy to. And I know a couple of the most famous people in the world, and it is not to be desired. But you do you, become a star, you'll be fine. But please know that when you don't become a star, you'll also be fine.
Yeah.
And that was the speech. I go, like, ooh.
Do you like the fame?
Well, I'm not very famous. I like...
Do you like your level of fame?
Yeah. It has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Would you be more famous? Where would you turn the dial if you could put it up or down?
No, I don't want to be more famous. I'd like to make more work, so I understand the side effect might be more fame. I'd like to make a feature that's a hit, and sometimes I feel chippy about people I think have done less impressive stuff that are more famous, but it's so much about looks, like I look fine, but I was never going to be I'm never going to be one of those people everyone feeds off, because that's about beauty, really. Mostly, isn't it? Really think about all the people.
Well, I mean, being a heartthrob superstar is, but like being Kevin Spacey or someone is.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also, there's American
Frank
fame.
Langella.
So American fame. I don't want that.
Yeah.
But I do want people to come and see my shows in America. So that's part of the...
So what are you doing in the States? What are the shows?
I've been doing this thing in Australia and England called An Unfunny Evening with Tim Minchin and his piano. And it's just part of my journey of like making sure people don't know what to expect from me. And it's just me and a piano, and I'm just playing songs and talking about them. And I'm not doing the punchliney stuff because I just think it ages. Like if you know a punch, it's like doing old jokes.
Right.
And I haven't written comedy songs for a long time, but
when you say punchliney stuff, do you mean punchliney songs?
No, punchliney songs. So the songs that go, oh, where's he going to go with this?
Yeah.
Only a ginger, or fuck, I love boobs though. Like the really comedy songs one.
Fuck, I love boobs though.
Oh, it's such a good song. That is
Great
a proper
song.
clever song. But
Great number.
That stood the test of time. But so I'm not doing my comedy material particularly, but I'm playing You Grow on Me Like a Tumor, and all my songs are quirky, and I talk about them in my talky way.
Right.
But it's not stand up.
So it's a bit of whimsy, a bit of comedy.
A bit of comedy.
It's
just
music.
That. It's just me and a piano.
Just a bloody
talking.
Lovely night at the theatre, Timothy.
All I can say is that people have really, really, really responded to it here. So, and I haven't played in America for 8 years.
Who are your peeps?
Canada.
Who are your peeps over there?
Same as my peeps everywhere, like bookish.
Yeah, nerds like me.
Lots of nerds, lots of like quirky people, and like people of all different shapes and sizes and autistic people, and they're pretty geeky.
And I was going to say where do they get tickets, but then I realized that Google exists and they can just go Tim Minchin
and there's certainly
tour
sold out shows. There's tickets in Austin and Minneapolis and some of the but
the second tier.
I've toured there quite a lot. And I was like, why isn't it selling out? And I suddenly realized that the theatre's like 2,500 seats. So it's doing fine.
Right.
I'm doing, they're not all, but I'm doing kind of big-ish rooms and I'm really excited.
Great.
When you don't tour very often, it's sometimes hard to get the traction again. But this is my re-entry into the market.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Speaking of gaggy songs, you're reminding me of, there are 2 points to this question. One is, do you remember going on television talk shows for the first time? Because as a lover of the format of television talk shows, and I used to love, Jon Stewart and Dave Letterman and all those guys, Conan, I know you went on Jonathan Ross quite a lot, which is a big British talk show. And then the second part of that question was gaggy songs. The song that you did for the Christmas special of Jonathan Ross.
4 Puffs and a Piano?
No, not that one, which was
really
also
good.
Legendary.
The one about his wife?
Never went to air.
Oh, Woody Allen
Jesus.
It was for an Easter special. Oh, Christmas special.
It was Christmas?
Yeah.
I'd never seen it before. I want to play it for people.
Be to Jesus.
Do you want to tee it up?
Oh, no. It just does what it says on the tin.
Jesus was a Jewish philosopher, had a lot of nice ideas about our existential fears, much admired by his peers, short and Jewish and quite political.
So
I used to play that at festivals with my band. That was really good as a festival tune, the whole audience.
Did you write it for the Jonathan Ross Christmas special?
I did.
Right, and then you so at least you got some use out of it, because they didn't air it.
They didn't air it because I thought it would offend people, and then
To hear the rest of this conversation, go to uncomfortableconversations.substack.com/listen, and you will get your own personal premium podcast feed with at least 3 extra episodes of the podcast every month and heaps of extra stuff, including the remainder right now of the fabulous conversation you've just been hearing. If it was worth listening to this much of, don't rob yourself of the rest. Pull out your phone right now and search for Uncomfortable Conversations on Substack.